right? How to put it in, how to take it out, can do very, very well. But the majority of people who put liquidity in, smaller players, probably lost money on the deal. So it just depends on how well you understand liquidity and whether or not, like, what tokens you put in, whether or not the market moves against you, whether or not your impermanent loss becomes permanent and you effectively lost money on the deal or not. More about Yeah, I've never been a fan of providing liquidity, although I have done it before when it seemed beneficial to me to do it. Um, and then I pulled my liquidity when it wasn't beneficial for me anymore. Um, you know what I mean? That's like, it's a very self-centered kind of a game, but I don't primarily do liquidity providing.
Well, I started doing it to test it out. I even posted some play things I did on my first Twitter post just to kind of let people know how it looked like and how it worked. And it's a good play for when the market is sideways and people are complaining. Well, at least I'm earning something.
Oh, definitely. As long if the market's sideways, you're just collecting those fees, and it's like a net win.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, 2 weeks. I did enough money to pay my rent, so I'm happy.
Yeah, it's like you do that, and then if you, unfortunately, like if you are in a pair and then the market moves against you, then hopefully what you made up is, it just depends on whether or not the market is moving fast or like sideways, and or if you're providing liquidity like a token versus US dollar, and then the market moves up very fast, did you lose money or make money on that deal? I don't know. It depends, I guess. Depending on what tokens you're talking about. But
Well,
yeah,
I
I've
I
seen people
only
who made shit tons of money with the market sideways with a huge amount of liquidity positions on even stable coins before. I mean, you can totally do it.
well I basically did it with X and USDC only, and for the reason that I first only put USDC. So worst case scenario, all that USDC would be turned into X, and it would be like if I had just dollar cost averaged into buying X. So none of the possible outcomes was actually bad for me and what I wanted to do with it. So if it stays in that range for a long time, I just accrue fees. If it goes above the range, I still have my USDC plus the fee. And if it's below, I just happen to dollar cost average into X. So,
Yeah, the best case scenario when you're analyzing liquidity providing is, do you want both of the tokens? Right? If you want both of the tokens, you don't mind owning less or more of either of them. That is like the best way to do liquidity providing, because no matter how the market goes, you're happy. You're right, and you made fees along the way, right?
yeah, exactly. And if in that particular range you have a nice percentage of the entire pool, which right now with the liquidity pools for X being lower, it's a possibility, you can accrue fees quite faster. Like the first time I did it just to play around, on average I was making like 0.8% for 1 week every day. So 0.8% a day for one week.
Yeah, I mean, so there's definitely ways you can make yield in crypto, but it effectively comes down to like, where's the yield coming from? When people get really screwed when they put money into things and they don't know where the yield is coming from. And the thing is like magic, internet money, which it is. And then like where does yield come from? I don't know. There's like this black box that's out there that they do stuff, they do trading, and then they give me yield, and it's like awesome. I'm making great yield. Like, but where does it come from? You should be able to break it down on your hand. You should be able to explain it simply. But since most people can't, then that's how scammers get you, right? That's how people get you, that are like, oh my God, you can make 50% APR on this thing, but don't worry about how we make the yield. We're going to give it to you. Like, yeah, no, I really want to know how the yield's being made because I don't want you to screw me over.
Yep. And this yield is quite easy to understand. Because people want to play around with their money, and you earn some of them.
Yeah, I mean, as complicated as crypto is, like it is actually possible to understand what's happening and then explain it simply. And that's how you can like know what you're doing so you can mitigate like getting screwed, but then also make money over the long term. Right. But it takes time to understand, like what, 6 months really to understand liquidity providing, probably. If you spend 6 months understanding that, then you'd be like a really good person to understand liquidity providing. But then you could take that 6 months to like almost anything in crypto and staking across all the chains. How you spend 6 months trying to learn something, you're going to learn it in 6 months, and then now you know it. Right? I mean, but you got to put the time in. Like me, I put 4 to 6 hours a day for 2 years. If people who don't want to put the time in, those are the ones who do life not understanding what's happening and then getting sucked into their rug pools. The person they believe didn't really understand it, and that other person believes somebody else, and now you're talking about 3rd or 4th levels away from the dude who thinks he might understand it a little bit, and now but you're taking the guy's word of it, who's taking another word.
Your mic is dying, Gamma.
Went over a cell tower. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. No, I was just talking about like, right, how most people when they're new to crypto, they believe a person who believes a person, and then maybe they're lucky, maybe they're not, but they didn't really understand anything. And then then eventually you learn that you need to understand this stuff a little bit, and then so you can start making like actual decisions, and you can like call people. Oh, I got cut out again. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Oh, okay. I'm traveling. I'm just saying, eventually, if you spend 6 months, right, for the group, so if you just find a topic that you want to know about, like staking, and then spend 6 months learning about it, then you'll know that. So no one can bullshit you about it, or like take 6 months and learn how Ethereum and Bitcoin actually work, right? Probably first, then you'll understand that. When somebody comes up with a new L1, and they talk to you about it, then you can understand what they're talking about, and then you can call bullshit when they start talking about some weird bullshit. They're like they're doing this new protocol, and it's like fucking AI, driven, and it's like uses space lasers and all this crazy bullshit. And you're like, okay, well that doesn't really seem plausible. Can you explain that to me one more time? What's going on? Can I see your documentation? Like, okay, I need to figure out what's going on with this. Oh my God, this thing is completely horseshit. Maybe I don't want to go with that project. Maybe I want to go with this thing that's boring that I actually understood because it's actually believable that it can be accomplished. Without like basic understanding of the infrastructure, it's really hard to understand when somebody says things that are like pie in the sky, like impossible to do, but they sound great. So like, let me buy that because it's going to do awesome, and then it fails horribly. Versus the thing that's kind of boring, but it succeeds massively because it was actually able to be accomplished.
Well, to me, that's the same idea with how like 99.9% of people look at NFTs, right? Oh, NFTs are going to solve all the problems of the world. We'll like the guy that was having Richard on his show, the Goxstein, I believe it's his name. Richard explained like three different ways with three different examples why NFTs don't work on most scenarios that people believe they do, and he still didn't want to understand it. It's like, how far can you go to not look at the evidence presented in front of you? It's like,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know. I'm not a huge fan of NFTs, but I understand there's a use case. And Richard isn't a huge fan of NFTs, but he understands there are actual like use cases for non-fungible tokens. But monkey pictures isn't the primary use case, right? That it's going to be like world dominating use case for NFTs. Like there are a
yeah,
bunch of other use cases that aren't developed. These are harder to do.
yeah, there are use cases, of course, but uh, most, like 99% of people's examples, are not one of them. And that's a problem.
Yeah,
Like, you gave the example, they were talking about Alfa Romeo adding NFTs to the cars, but how is that different than Alfa Romeo itself having their own sort of internal NFT to keep track of things, or just having a normal database? Just makes no sense. Right.
Yeah, I mean, so you can, tying financial assets, actual blockchain financial assets to an NFT in a way that adds functionality. Yes, sure, like it makes perfect sense. And then there's like the other use cases of like say connecting a NFT to like a ticket that's like a game, like you enter a stadium and you go to a football game as an NFT. I'm like, yeah, that's a use case, but like they already do that. Like, what's innovative about that? Because all that shit's on a centralized server anyway. Is anybody stopping you from like buying a ticket to some football game and then like just using the Apple Pay or wallet on your phone to go into the nobody's stopping you. You need censorship resistant to like buy? No, you don't. Like
Yeah,
games, right? I mean,
and
if you NFTs inside the in-game items in games, that was like that seems like a plausible use case. But for the most part, those are all centralized, and companies don't want to allow products from one game to go into another game that they don't own. So that shit's owned on a centralized server anyway. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
of
yeah,
course.
there's use cases.
Yeah, but the use cases are when everything is working on the blockchain, uh, and not when it touches the real world, because then it breaks. Because you can have nefarious actors saying that something is true when it's not, or the other way around.
Yeah,
And
so a lot of that, a lot.
the examples Richard gave on the interview he was making, I think made it pretty clear to everyone that watched why those those problems exist when it touches the real world. Because if you're using it as a valuable, infallible, trustless thing, but then you need to trust a third party, then you're just losing any point of having it. Right?
Yeah, I mean, so here's an example that's like a shit example for NFTs is like deeds of physical objects like your house. People are get super excited about how deeds are going to be on the blockchain. I'm like, but that there's a legal construct. There's a huge industry that's built behind like maintaining deeds of houses, and that gets screwed up constantly. So you're right. So there's like a legal framework that backs it up. So no matter who owns the NFT, that house is still owned by some entity that's going to be backed up by a judge, not by the blockchain. So that doesn't really make any freaking sense at all, right?
Yeah,
So you're like,
yeah,
you can
yeah,
store data on there, but you can store data anywhere because deeds of houses are stored locally in governments and like private companies store deeds of houses. And I'm like, yeah, you can put that information on the blockchain, but it's not like the blockchain is enforcing ownership, which is the whole point of blockchains, to enforce ownership of things that are actually on the blockchain, right? With private keys.
Yeah,
If you can
and
go outside and then a judge can say that this person owns it instead of this person, then you're kind of like, what's the point of having the NFT of the deed of the house if the judge can just say that person, no matter what the NFT says, whoever, if what private key owns this NFT, that doesn't really matter anymore because this person owns it over here. Like, and
yeah,
it negates the entire purpose.
and people think as NFTs as being a new concept that is being used or explored on the blockchain. But the first time I heard NFTs was in 2017, right when I started learning about blockchain. So it's not something new. It's just something that
Well,
has been hyped in
like
this cycle.
Crypto Kitties
And
happened in 2017. Those were technically NFTs.
yeah,
Brought
yeah,
down the
yeah, yeah,
Ethereum
true,
network. Yeah,
true,
but
true, true.
2017 wasn't that long ago, So
I,
I thought you were
I,
gonna
I,
have an example from like 1900 or something.
no, no, no. I'm meaning inside the blockchain. And yeah, I saw the beginning and end of the CryptoKitties, and it's what will happen with most new NFTs, in my opinion. And the first way I heard it described, or one of the use cases it might have, would be to, for instance, decentralized ownership of, let's say, houses and valuable things. Like you could own a share of a property or a share of a condom or whatever. But then it goes right back down to the blockchain needs to touch the real world. You need to have someone that backs that NFT with uh, their own centralized database, and then it breaks because you cannot enforce it. You cannot
Yeah,
guarantee that it's actually worth what you think it's worth in terms of real world assets, and you cannot enforce the ownership. So
yeah. So
it
like
makes no sense.
here's an example of an NFT that would work because it's backed like so there's a NFTs work in my opinion only when the thing that it represents is on the blockchain, right? Like that's what we're talking about. So say a hex stake is owned
Yeah, of course.
on the blockchain, it's owned or whatever. So you can have a contract that issues 100 NFTs that represent ownership of that hex stake. And those 100 NFTs could be like traded and sold and moved or whatever. This is fractional ownership of a hex stake. I'm like, yeah, because at some point in the future, those NFTs are connected to the hex stake and they can be redeemed for the hex stake. And that seems like that's a valid use case for NFTs, one that's not created yet or whatever. But it's like at least the NFTs represent ownership of a thing that's on the blockchain.
Well, you
So
already
you can
have
go
that
stick.
in a way in terms of X stakes, and
Yeah,
those
yeah.
are
I'm
one of
just
the few
saying.
use cases, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying like that's a use case for NFTs that seems plausible. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
like I mean, whether or not it's successful or not, we don't know about that. But I'm saying it would be a plausible, relatively, understandable like use case for NFTs. But like
Yeah.
ownership of a painting in the real world, like a painting in the Louvre being represented by NFTs, like no, the Louvre owns the painting. You own a copy of it that you're calling an NFT on the blockchain, and now you somehow people are like under this misguided understanding that have ownership of that. Like, no, you don't have ownership of that painting that's in the Louvre. The Louvre owns it, or whoever owns or whoever gave it to them. You own a copy of it, and you've given that copy a value, like some value. Like you own a monkey picture, you own a monkey picture. I can come make a copy of that monkey picture, but we've collectively determined that that monkey picture is worth 10 ETH. Okay, but I can get a copy of it, so I really don't want to pay 10 ETH. But okay, I'll give you that. Like that we as a group have determined that you own it because you own the NFT. Fine, I don't give a shit because I don't really value monkey pictures that much.
Yeah, it's more about street cred, let's say, than actual use case, right? oh, I have that picture. It's on the blockchain. Okay, that's it. It will be the new hard market. Will be NFTs on the blockchain.
Yeah, it's like a social consensus that like I own that monkey picture, and then everyone's gonna shame me if I use that monkey picture as my Twitter avatar because somebody else technically owns it because they own the NFT. It's whether or not I care about like that at all, right? But I've seen that on Twitter where somebody put a picture in an NFT. They didn't actually own the NFT that was supposedly backing that up, and then they were trying to get Twitter shamed. So it's whether or not that guy cares at all. Probably doesn't
Well,
care.
that would actually be an interesting thing. Get one of those golden whatevers, put it as an image, and see how many people give us hate. That would be nice outrage marketing for Richard.
Yeah. So yeah, I right now there's other than like I've been given a couple of NFTs that have like no value to me at all, but I own a few because they've been given to me. Like I was a number one person in this project, and so they gave 100 NFTs to the people, like the first people in this thing. Like, yeah, I don't really care because that project failed anyway. Whatever. So I own a few NFTs, and then there's NFTs, right? Say that represent hex stakes. Well, that seems like a use case because that's a use case for something that lives on the blockchain. Sure, awesome. I like that use case, and there will be others. It's not NFTs bad. It's monkey pictures, maybe not the best sustainable use case for NFTs.
Use of
Hate me,
resources,
hate
probably.
me, hate me if you want. Hate me if you want, but I don't think monkey pictures are a great use case for NFTs.
Yep, I agree. But now you gave me the idea of having a copy of a golden NFT on my profile. I have to think about it.
Yeah, see, there you go. Right, that's the real outrage.
Uh,
Use one of
someone
those
needs
Bored
to tell
Apes.
Richard. Yeah, someone needs to tell Richard to change his profile picture to a golden boards, whatever.
Oh, there's so many NFT projects. I can't even keep track of them all. They all just blend together for me.
Yeah. I actually heard or saw an interesting YouTube video about what that particular NFT project might refer to and be linked to some racist and, let's see, conspiracy theories things. But the points that people made were actually quite impressive. It's like it's so many things that you could brush past that altogether make it hard for you not to see them, you know.
I like Richard made the point about like good on people selling NFTs, but people who buy NFTs are probably not the smartest people ever. Well, I'm not saying that specifically, but okay, whatever. But like literally, like I see constantly this 13-year-old girl sold a collection of 5 NFTs and they made like $20,000, and I'm thinking, well, good job. But then what I don't think is, hey, those guys. I don't really think about the people who bought them. I think about the 13-year-old girl who sold them, and I think that's awesome. Good job.
Yeah. And here I am trying to teach my kid to buy gummy bears for 5 cents and selling them at 10. I should be teaching her to create NFTs.
Yeah, you need like a collection of like 10 NFTs and try and market it, and then sell them for like $100,000, and then put that 100 grand into Hex and a Hex stake to their 18th birthday, and then see now you see that's a plan right there, right? I mean
Well,
that's a workable plan.
now I just got another idea. Create a set of gummy bear NFTs owned by my
Well,
daughter,
that's a
and
billion
and
dollar
she
idea
can
right
sell.
there.
And they are all backed by real gummy bear.
I mean, like the key part is you take the money you made from NFTs and you buy Hex with it, and you make a Hex stake so they can pay for college. See, that's
Yeah.
the key part right there. Plug
Well,
in the Hex, of course.
I have an advantage because college here is quite cheap comparatively with other places. So probably I would save it for other stuff.
Yeah, I think. I've said before I made Hex stakes for my kids, and I put it out 15 years. So I think those will do really well for them. And if nothing else, they will not have to pay for college. It'll be paid for them by their Hex stake, and then they maybe have some extra change left over for a Lambo or something.
Yeah, I also did my 15 years for whatever she needs when the time comes. Thankfully, not college because here it's quite cheap, but I'm sure she'll need other stuff. So.
Yeah, so I'm sure college education will cost here. For me, it cost me personally say 80,000 for masters, bachelor's and masters combined.
Damn. How
But I
many
also got
years was it?
supplemented with the army. Well, I mean that's not the full cost because my undergrad was 60,000, but the army paid for 40,000 of that. So I had like maybe 10 or 20,000 left over, and then my master program was 2 years. So
Your mic is dying.
yeah, my mic went out again, I think. So like
Yeah.
all in all, I had like $80,000 in student loans that I paid off like a couple years ago. But I assume that college for each of my boys is going to cost over 100 grand each in 15 years because everything's going up in value.
And inflation and etc. Well, here I can tell you that my graduate in physics was like 3K. So
How
quite
much?
cheap comparatively. 3 grand, 1,000 a year.
Oh God! I mean, I had a filling once that was more than that.
Yep. And the masters would be a bit more, like 1,500 per year, so 3K. Even if you go to a private school, like for MBA or masters in economics, it would be around 8K for the masters. Even in a private school renowned internationally. So
Yeah, I've been thinking about getting a PhD in economics, and it would be like 100 grand for that. Just tuition, right? Not the time, not the books, not the everything else. The tuition
yeah, of
itself would
course.
be like around 100 grand. But then I'd also need to get probably a master's to do the prerequisites to have that in. And I'm like, oh my god, and I really want to put that effort in. I've been thinking about it. I don't know if I want to go back to school.
Actually, I'm going to check it out because the last time I checked the prices was like 2 to 3 years ago, when I was still thinking about maybe taking a master's in business and economics. But let me take a look.
Yeah, there's a school about 20 minutes from where I live now that is a good, really, really good school. So I have to do the introductory interview with admissions to figure out where I would go, how likely it would be could I get in, and then I got to take the standardized test again, and then that's like 6 years of going to school again, just for like the piece of paper that, and not like I need it for money or anything, but it just like street cred, right? Get that PhD. Because on the streets they really care about that PhD, right?
Yeah, I decided not even taking my master's, and then I changed to programming. So, and I'm very fine with it.
Yeah, I do everything on my own. I learned everything on my own. So I don't know. I've been thinking about it. I probably won't do it, but it's still like in the back of my mind. It's like a thing that I've always wanted to get. And it's a goal of mine that's on the list. So we'll see if it ever happens. I'm going to be really committed to it. It's a lot of work.
So I just checked, and in Nova School of Business and Economics, the masters would be 12K for 2 years. But this is a private international school. So if you took your masters in like Lisbon University, it would be like 1/3 of this or less.
Yeah, I mean, I already have a master's. I have an MBA that I got that I was really proud of, but I've not actually like got anything out of it other than the experience of going there. And now I got a piece of paper. Going into my MBA, I wasn't expecting so much people the only people who care that you have an MBA are other MBAs. So, but if you don't have an MBA, then they can care less. So I'm literally it was kind of a waste of time. But then I got that master's, which I always wanted. And I really enjoyed going to the classes and learning stuff. So I actually got some learning. But effectively, for the job market, it didn't really help me at all.
So if you're an international student for the PhD, you can pay as little as 6K.
Well, there you go. It's a lot better than 100K.
Yep.
Was that Portugal? That's you're in Portugal, right?
Yes, Portugal. So if you really want your kids to go to college, university, and have no taxes on crypto right now, that might change, of course. It's one nice thing to consider, an option to consider.
Yeah. Well, we're locked into U.S. citizenship at this point, so we're kind of fucked on the taxes. So my plan is just to make a shit ton of money and then pay the taxes and be okay with that. Puerto Rico is the other option, and I don't really want to move to Puerto Rico. Nothing against Puerto Rico, but I like where I'm living now, so I just deal with the taxes and then doing what I have to do here to mitigate taxes.
Yeah. You said you were considering living in another place other than the US. Which was it?
Oh, Philippines. My wife's Filipino, so we have a plot of land there, and so we're gonna build a vacation house. And so, spend the summer, it's kind of a deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's basically the Philippines or where we're living now, which is the States, Midwest, and that's where we're good. Like we took us 12 hours. We drove to Florida, went to a beach, drive back. No big deal. Nice weather, doesn't flood. Other bad weather like power going out because it's so hot that the power system can't deal with the with the surge in power
The workload.
in the summer. Or even in the wintertime, honestly. It goes down constantly.
How high the temperatures go there?
110. I think I've seen it.
That's in Fahrenheit.
120. I've seen it. It's in Texas, but so the Midwest, and I saw 120 before. It was pretty high.
Yeah, it's the same as we might get here in the center of the country during the summer. Usually near the ocean, it's more cool. But yeah, like if you go to the center of the country, you can get between 100 and 100 and 120 is maybe too much, but like last August we reached like 45 Celsius, which should be 115 more or less.
Yeah, normally it's around 100 and less than 110, 103, 106, 107. Somewhere around there, which is really hot, but at least it's not like 130.
Yeah, with that temperature, I prefer to be either inside my house or at the beach. Or the
Yeah, I like
swimming.
to hang outside on the back deck, and there's like a park that we can see, which is really nice. And it's like I can only go there in the early morning or like after dinner, because otherwise it's like way too hot, and I don't want to be out there. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, me and my parents sometimes we go to the center because my grandparents had a house there, and we installed the swimming pool is not that big, but like during the day, you can only be inside the pool, and even in the pool, the water is like 30 degrees Celsius or more. So it's like you are in the broth. So 90 Fahrenheit, just the water.
What sucks here is like everywhere in the States, basically everywhere has problems with workers. So like our pool, it was only open for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which normally it's open all during the week. And because of the COVID and because of the economy and because of the worker shortage, whatever that can, whatever reason you want to blame on that, they were down to like 3 days a week instead of like 7 days a week. But yeah, in the summertime, that kind of sucks because, of course, the big pool that's nearby, the community pool, is really nice. So, who doesn't like going to the swimming during the summertime? Everybody, unless you're like allergic to water, I guess.
Is it too far away from the ocean? Not really, right? An island.
Um, we're like 6 hours away from the ocean.
6 hours away?
Yeah,
It's still
it's
quite
like
far.
five. It's like 5 or 6 hours away from the ocean, and
Yeah.
so it's like we're not near the coast. But I mean, it is within driving distance, so we can spend the weekend on the beach if we want to go to one of the beach towns, which is nice.
Yeah, the one of the good things of living in a small country is that you can be in maximum 1 or 2 hours drive of a nice water source, a big water source, or a mountain, or a forest, or whatever.
All right, well, we're going to go pee and we're going to change and I'm going to drive. So, guys, I'm going to get off and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Later.
See you later. I have to go too. Have a nice trip.
Yep, later. It's been a pleasure as always.
Same here.